In a small, serene village, filled with lively colours, earthy scents, and the symphony of chirping birds, life moves at a pace as gentle as the breeze. The village is woven with narrow dirt paths winding through fields, cottages dotting the landscape like mismatched beads in a necklace, each one unique yet connected by a shared rhythm of simplicity and tradition. Villagers gather by the river in the morning to wash clothes and exchange stories, while the elderly sit under sprawling banyan trees, reminiscing about the days gone by. Market day is a highlight here, with vendors calling out to passers-by, children scampering around, and a sense of community in every smile exchanged and every helping hand offered. This quaint village is where Mia was born and raised, a woman of grace and quiet strength. With large, soulful eyes and a gentle spirit, Mia exudes a warmth that can soften even the harshest of hearts. She grew up in modest surroundings, yet her family's love and their closeness were wealth to her. Her father, though a farmer of humble means, was known for his integrity and wisdom. He always taught her that happiness and respect were the true riches of life. Mia's mother, who baked the village's best bread, instilled in her daughter a deep love for traditions and a sense of pride in her roots. Their life was simple, but Mia cherished every moment of it, finding beauty in the everyday. As fate would have it, Mia's life took a turn when she met Daniel, a man from a vastly different world. A successful businessman and a self-made billionaire, Daniel was charismatic, ambitious, and, most noticeably, from a world of polished luxury and grandeur. They met by chance, and despite their contrasting backgrounds, he was drawn to her authenticity and kindness. They fell in love, and Daniel, convinced he wanted Mia by his side, took her away from the village to a life of comfort she could have only dreamed of. But as the days turned into months and the initial thrill of love and wealth wore thin, a harsh reality emerged. Daniel, though he loved her, had little respect for her humble roots. He would frequently mock her village upbringing, viewing her family's simple lifestyle as a sign of weakness or inferiority. Every family gathering became a source of anxiety for Mia, as Daniel would cast judgmental looks and make snide comments. He saw her family's modest means as something embarrassing rather than endearing. This constant belittlement hurt Mia deeply, yet her love for Daniel held her in place, hoping that one day he might see the beauty she did in her family's humble life. In this strained dynamic, Mia's family became an unspoken struggle between them, a line of division that Daniel used to subtly exert control, reinforcing his sense of superiority. But just when Mia thought she'd have to endure this heartache in silence, a powerful change was brewing, one that neither of them could foresee. One late afternoon, Mia found herself standing in the centre of Daniel's luxurious living room, surrounded by a world of gold-framed mirrors, marble floors, and chandeliers that glowed like captured stars. The vastness of the room only made her feel smaller, more distant from the warmth of her village. But today, the room felt colder than ever. Daniel had just come home from work, looking unusually serious. Without his usual easy charm, he began to explain that he was expecting a major promotion soon. But there was one condition attached. Daniel's company had just brought on a new CEO, an influential and somewhat mysterious figure named Mr. Harris, who had risen through the ranks thanks to his visionary approach and insistence on loyalty and values. Mr. Harris was not just interested in profits. He cared deeply about family backgrounds, respect, and humility. The rumour circulating through the office was that Mr. Harris preferred promoting those who had strong family connections and respected their roots. For Daniel, this news was as unsettling as it was shocking. Daniel's face twisted in frustration as he explained that Mr. Harris had already invited him to a dinner to get to know his family. He would need to introduce Mia's family as well, something Daniel dreaded. His pride and ego were at odds with the new company expectations, and he found himself resenting Mia's family even more. "How can I present them to my new boss?" he snapped, his words dripping with disdain. "They're so simple, so unsophisticated. I can't let them ruin this opportunity for me." The words felt like a slap to Mia. She stood there, silent and hurt. watching Daniel pace around the room with a mixture of fear and anger. The man she'd once admired for his ambition and confidence now looked like a stranger. She realized, perhaps for the first time, how deeply Daniel despised the very roots that made her who she was. Her heart ached not just for herself, but for her family. Her father, who had worked tirelessly in the fields to put food on their table. Her mother, who spent nights baking to make ends meet. And here was Daniel, a man she loved, speaking of them as if they were a stain on his life. Mia's vulnerability rose, but so did her inner strength. She was torn between standing up for her family and trying to keep the peace. She loved Daniel, but could she really let him degrade her family, their sacrifices and her pride in them? Her feelings spiraled, and a sense of injustice built up inside her. She felt like a stranger in her own life, caught between two worlds she couldn't reconcile. As the evening progressed, Daniel continued to vent his frustrations. He even suggested that maybe Mia's family should stay quiet during the dinner, or perhaps skip it altogether. The dismissiveness in his tone cut deep, and Mia could no longer hold back. She finally spoke up, her voice trembling but firm. "Daniel, my family may not have your wealth or your lifestyle, but they have something that can't be bought. Dignity. They may be simple, but they are honest, loving, and true to themselves. That's something worth respecting." Daniel scoffed, brushing off her words as sentimental nonsense. But Mia's resolve only grew. She was no longer just the quiet, accommodating wife he could control. This moment marked the beginning of her realization that her love for him could not mean sacrificing her family's honor or her self-respect. And though she couldn't yet see how, Mia knew that things would never be the same again. In the shadows of the looming dinner event, Mia felt the presence of an antagonist much closer than she'd ever imagined. Daniel himself. For all his charisma, ambition, and success, his heart seemed to be hardened by prejudice and pride. This realization solidified her resolve to face what lay ahead, even if it meant risking the very marriage that had brought her into this life. With each passing day, the divide between them deepened, foreshadowing a transformation that would change both their lives in ways they couldn't foresee. The weeks leading up to the company dinner were increasingly tense. Daniel's frustration turned to quiet disdain, simmering just beneath the surface. He began distancing himself from Mia, his words colder, his glances sharp. Each day, she endured his subtle criticisms, comments about her simple habits, sighs over her lack of sophistication. If she mentioned her family, he would change the topic or make a comment laced with sarcasm. Mia's once joyful days now felt clouded with self-doubt and sadness, but she held on, knowing that her family's love and values were not flaws, despite Daniel's disdain. Then, Daniel took things further, suggesting that perhaps Mia should ask her family to refrain from coming to the upcoming dinner with Mr. Harris. "It's for your own good, Mia," he explained, his tone almost patronizing. "Imagine if they embarrassed you in front of my boss. I don't want them to feel uncomfortable or out of place." The condescension in his voice stung, but Mia kept her head held high, unwilling to let him make her feel ashamed of the people she loved. The real test, however, came when Daniel's mother, Helena, arrived for a surprise visit. Helena was a woman as formidable as Daniel was ambitious. She carried an air of authority, known for her refined tastes and unyielding expectations. Helena had never approved of Mia, seeing her as a liability to Daniel's social standing. Now, with the pressure mounting for Daniel's promotion, Helena took it upon herself to ensure Mia understood her place in their lives. Helena lost no time making her intentions clear. She greeted Mia with a cursory nod, her eyes scanning Mia as if assessing a less than worthy purchase. Helena wasted no opportunity to emphasize the importance of the dinner with Mr. Harris and how Daniel's future depended on impressions. She often spoke with a loaded smile, delivering backhanded compliments that stung more than any outright criticism. One afternoon, as Mia was setting the table for lunch, Helena entered the kitchen, her gaze sweeping over Mia's humble setup. She clicked her tongue in disapproval. "Mia, darling, I think you should leave these arrangements to the professionals." she said, her tone dripping with disdain. "After all, we don't want any rustic touches at such an important dinner, do we?" Mia felt her cheeks burn, but she held her tongue, choosing to focus on preparing the meal. Her mother had always taught her that dignity was best kept in silence. However, Helena didn't stop there. She continued, "And about your family, dear. I trust you understand why it might be best if they stayed away. Daniel's career is at stake after all. We don't want to risk that, do we?" Mia's hands froze mid-motion, but she took a deep breath, steadying herself. She realized then that standing up for her family was not just an act of love, but an assertion of her worth. She lifted her head and replied with a calm strength that surprised even her. "My family may not have wealth, Helena, but they have given me values I treasure. I hope you'll understand that they are a part of me, and I won't hide them." Helena's lips pressed into a thin line, and she left the kitchen, leaving Mia with a renewed sense of resolve. She knew that this silent battle would not end there. And she was right. Over the next few days, Helena's remarks grew sharper, casting Mia in a negative light whenever Daniel was around. She would sigh and comment on Mia's inexperience, or hint that Daniel deserved a wife who understands his world. Daniel, already stressed, seemed to absorb these words like poison, growing colder with each passing day. When Mia tried to discuss her feelings with him, he dismissed her concerns, even implying that perhaps she should work on fitting in more. The condescending words stung, yet Mia held her ground, determined not to lose herself to their judgment. One afternoon, she went to a nearby park to clear her mind. She found herself seated on a bench, feeling the weight of her emotions press down on her. Just then, an elderly woman sat beside her. She had a kind smile and gentle eyes that radiated warmth. Mia couldn't help but feel comforted, as if fate had sent this stranger to ease her loneliness. The woman noticed Mia's troubled expression and struck up a conversation, asking if something was troubling her. Mia, surprised by the woman's perceptiveness, shared a little about her struggles, omitting specific details. The woman listened patiently, nodding at intervals. Finally, she said, "True worth isn't in wealth or status, my dear, but in character. When people try to make you feel small, it's often because they fear their own weaknesses. Stand tall, for who you are is enough." Her words lifted something heavy off Mia's heart, and she thanked the woman before they parted ways. This simple interaction reminded her of the values her family instilled in her, the strength to hold her head high, no matter how others perceived her. She returned home with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to face the upcoming dinner, even if she felt alone in her struggles. As the days drew closer to the dinner, Daniel's demeanor grew more hostile. Small arguments erupted over minor things: what she wore, how she spoke, even the way she smiled. Mia's patience was stretched thin, yet she held on, her heart steeled by the quiet assurance that she was more than the opinions of those around her. Meanwhile, there were those in Daniel's life who saw Maya's goodness. A few of his close friends, like Anna, a former college mate, and Jason, his business partner, noticed how she was often left on the sidelines, and they couldn't understand why Daniel would treat someone so kind with such coldness. Anna, in particular, found herself sympathizing with Mia. She had watched her quietly endure the harsh treatment, often offering her a kind word or a reassuring smile at gatherings. On one occasion, she even whispered to Mia, "You're stronger than you know, Mia. Don't let anyone make you doubt it." These small moments became Maya's anchors. She could feel that her kindness and patience weren't going unnoticed, even in a world that valued wealth over worth. She felt her resilience growing, bolstered by the encouragement of those who saw her heart. It gave her courage to stand firm, to hold her family's honor close to her heart, even as Daniel and his mother continued their campaign to belittle her. But the biggest challenge was yet to come. The night of the dinner arrived, and as Mia prepared herself, she knew this was a pivotal moment. She wore a simple dress that reminded her of home, with delicate patterns that echoed her family's traditions. She looked at her reflection, steadying herself for what she anticipated would be an evening of veiled insults and social pressure. But Mia had reached a turning point. With her family's dignity in her heart and her newfound resilience guiding her, she was prepared to face whatever came next. What she didn't realise was that Mr. Harris, the new CEO, held values that would shake the foundations of Daniel's world. And by the end of the evening, life would be very different. Not just for Mia, but for everyone in the room. The evening of the much-anticipated dinner arrived, casting a tense shadow over Daniel and Mia's home. Mia had dressed in a modest, elegant dress that held traces of her heritage, a simple gown embroidered with delicate patterns from her village, a subtle nod to her roots that she wore with quiet pride. She took one last look in the mirror, feeling her heartbeat quicken as she prepared to face the evening. Her thoughts were with her family, their faces, and their love etched firmly in her mind, grounding her as she braced for whatever lay ahead. The guests began arriving, filling the home with a mix of laughter and polite conversations. Mr. Harris, the new CEO, arrived fashionably late, and all eyes turned to him as he entered. With a calm, authoritative presence, tall and distinguished, he commanded the room, exchanging greetings with ease. When he reached Mia and Daniel, he took her hand warmly, and Mia felt a flicker of reassurance from his genuine smile. "Daniel has told me a bit about you, Mia," he said, his gaze gentle. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you." Mia smiled and murmured a polite reply. But as the dinner continued, Daniel's nervousness turned to agitation. Every time Mr. Harris asked about family or values, Daniel would quickly steer the conversation elsewhere, a hint of embarrassment flashing in his eyes whenever his wife's background or family was even subtly implied. It was clear to Mia that he was determined to avoid any mention of her roots, perhaps hoping that Mr. Harris wouldn't probe too deeply. But then, the dinner took an unexpected turn. Mr. Harris raised his glass and began a toast, talking about his own humble beginnings and how his family had been his guiding light through the challenges he'd faced. "I value loyalty, integrity, and roots," he said, his voice carrying a weight of sincerity. "I believe that a person's true strength lies in honouring where they come from." At that moment, Helena, Daniel's mother, seized the opportunity to make her opinion known. Her voice laced with disdain, she said, "Some people rise above their roots, Mr. Harris, and others, well, they tend to cling to them, perhaps to their own detriment." She shot a pointed look at Mia, her eyes cold and dismissive. The room fell silent as Helena's words lingered uncomfortably in the air. Mia felt as if the ground had fallen out from under her, her face flushed with embarrassment and hurt, her mind racing with the sting of Helena's public humiliation. It was one thing to face Helena's cruelty behind closed doors, but now, in front of everyone, her husband, his boss, their colleagues, it felt like a betrayal that cut deeper than she'd ever imagined. To Mia's despair, Daniel did nothing to defend her. He looked away, his face unreadable, as if he couldn't bring himself to acknowledge the pain inflicted on her. The silence felt suffocating, and Mia could feel tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. She was on the verge of breaking, her resolve crumbling as the weight of isolation and shame settled heavily on her shoulders. In that moment, she felt utterly alone, as though the world she'd known had turned its back on her, and even the man she loved had abandoned her. The words of Helena and Daniel's silence hit her like a tidal wave, leaving her feeling like an outsider in her own life. She had sacrificed her comfort, her identity, and even her family's pride, all to fit into this world of wealth and status that now felt hollow and cold. Mia excused herself quietly, slipping out of the dining room and into the garden, where she finally let the tears fall. She clutched her dress, feeling the delicate embroidery her mother had lovingly stitched by hand, a stark reminder of the family that had loved her unconditionally, the people Daniel had tried so hard to hide. As she stood alone in the garden, Mia's thoughts spiraled into despair. She wondered if she had made a terrible mistake by leaving her village, by loving a man who could not respect the very essence of who she was. She felt an overwhelming sense of loss, a longing to return to the warmth and love of her family. The city, with all its grandeur and allure, felt like a prison, a place where she'd lost herself. Just then, a gentle voice broke through her thoughts. "Mia!" She turned to see Mr. Harris standing nearby, his face filled with genuine concern. He walked over, his tone kind yet firm. "I couldn't help but notice that something's not right. Would you mind talking about it?" Mia hesitated but found herself nodding, her voice barely a whisper as she spoke. "Sometimes it feels like I'm trying to fit into a life that was never meant for me. I come from a simple family, Mr. Harris, and sometimes I think that's something Daniel finds embarrassing." Mr. Harris listened attentively, his expression thoughtful. After a moment, he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Mia, never be ashamed of who you are or where you come from. True strength lies in honouring one's roots, not hiding them. It's something I look for in those around me because it speaks to character, not wealth." His words sparked a flicker of hope in Mia's heart. She realised that she wasn't alone, that someone recognised her worth beyond Daniel's shallow judgments and societal pressures. Mr. Harris's kindness felt like a lifeline, a reminder that her values and identity were her greatest strengths, not weaknesses. Mia wiped her tears, the weight on her chest lifting slightly. She returned to the dining room with her head held higher, more determined than ever. Her heart might have been bruised, but she was resolved not to let anyone, least of all Daniel or Helena, take away her dignity. And as she took her seat, she noticed Mr. Harris watching her with a look of respect that no wealth or status could ever replace. For the first time in a long while, Mia felt a small glimmer of hope, that change, perhaps even justice, might be within her reach. Mia returned to the dining room, her resolve hardened by Mr. Harris's words. She was done feeling ashamed of who she was or hiding her family's values. Tonight, she would take a stand, not just for herself but for the people who had taught her kindness, resilience, and integrity. As the dinner continued, Mr. Harris seemed to observe everything with a quiet, discerning eye. He directed a few polite questions to Mia about her background, asking what values she held closest. Mia, feeling both nervous and emboldened, shared a little about her family's simple life, their belief in honesty, and the way they taught her that one's worth was found in character, not wealth. She glanced at Daniel as she spoke, hoping he'd feel some pride, but he only shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding her gaze. When Mia finished, Mr. Harris looked impressed, nodding thoughtfully. "Thank you, Mia. You've reminded me of the very principles this company stands for. I always say, the people who honour where they come from are the ones who lead with true vision and purpose." His eyes then shifted to Daniel, the silence hanging heavily as he waited for a response. Daniel only managed a weak smile, clearly struggling to mask his frustration. Sensing the tension, Helena interjected. "Well, I think we all know that success is about adapting to new circles and leaving certain ties behind," she said pointedly. Her gaze lingered on Mia, a smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. Daniel nodded in agreement, backing his mother up without hesitation. Mia felt the familiar sting of their dismissiveness, but this time she refused to back down. The lingering words of Mr. Harris echoed in her mind, giving her courage. She turned to Daniel and in a calm but firm voice spoke words she'd been holding back for too long. "Daniel, I've supported you, embraced your world, and tried to be the wife you wanted me to be, but I won't stand by and let my family or myself be disrespected any longer. If being with you means hiding who I am, then maybe this isn't where I belong." Her words hung in the air, every eye in the room fixed on her. For a moment, Daniel looked genuinely shocked, as if he hadn't believed she'd ever stand up to him. But before he could respond, Mr. Harris stepped in, his voice firm and unwavering. "Daniel, I think Mia has shown more loyalty, courage, and integrity than many people here." He leaned back, his gaze intense. "In fact, I see those very qualities as essential for a leadership role in this company. But I have my reservations about anyone who cannot appreciate those virtues in others. Perhaps I misjudged when I thought you shared these values." Daniel's face drained of colour as he realised the implications. He stumbled over his words, trying to salvage the situation. "Mr. Harris, I assure you, I do appreciate respect. It's just that Mr. Harris cut him off, his expression unyielding. "A true leader values their roots and those who support them, Daniel. Wealth without respect or humility is a hollow existence." He then turned to Mia, his tone softening. "Mia, thank you for reminding me why I built this company around values, not just profits. It's people like you who give real worth to what we do." In a final, unexpected revelation, Mr. Harris added, "Mia, you may not know this, but I too came from humble beginnings. My family worked hard, and they taught me everything I needed to lead with purpose. I think you've shown remarkable grace and strength. If you ever choose to work with us, I'd be honored to have you join my team." The room fell silent, and Mia felt an overwhelming surge of gratitude and relief. This was a moment she'd never anticipated. Her virtues, once dismissed, now recognized by someone who mattered, someone who truly understood her worth. Helena's face twisted with shock and disbelief, while Daniel looked visibly defeated, realizing how his own arrogance had cost him not just his wife's respect, but perhaps his career's most crucial supporter. Mia felt a sense of justice wash over her as she saw their schemes and prejudice crumble before her eyes. With a newfound confidence, she stood up and extended a hand to Mr. Harris. "Thank you for this opportunity and for reminding me that integrity matters," she said, her voice steady. "But I think I need to find my own path, one that respects where I came from and who I am." Mr. Harris nodded in understanding. "Whatever you decide, know that you have an ally here. And remember, true success is about staying true to yourself." Mia left the dinner that night with her head held high, her heart lighter than it had felt in months. She had faced her fears, stood up for her family, and reclaimed her dignity. Walking away from Daniel's world felt freeing. And as she returned to her small but warm family home, she realized she had found peace and happiness, not in wealth, but in being true to herself. Daniel, meanwhile, was left to face the consequences of his actions. His schemes, born from arrogance and disdain, had backfired, leaving him isolated, his dreams of a promotion shattered. He'd lost the respect of both his boss and his wife, and he was forced to reckon with the emptiness his choices had created. For Mia, however, it was the beginning of a new journey, one where she would never again have to sacrifice her identity for someone else's approval. In the months that followed her decisive stand, Mia's life blossomed in ways she'd never dreamed possible. Free from the oppressive expectations of Daniel and his family, she returned to her roots, reconnecting with her family and community. Embraced by their warmth and support, Mia found comfort and joy in the simple life she'd once felt pressured to leave behind. With her reputation as a person of integrity spreading, Mia received an unexpected offer from Mr. Harris, who had been inspired by her courage and values. He proposed a business partnership, encouraging her to start a community outreach program for people from similar backgrounds, providing them with the skills and resources to thrive in a corporate world. Mia accepted wholeheartedly, channeling her strength and empathy into a project that would help others embrace their identities without compromise. This new venture not only gave Mia a sense of purpose, but also brought her financial independence and a profound sense of fulfillment. Meanwhile, Daniel's life took a very different turn. His blatant disregard for the principles Mr. Harris valued cost him more than his marriage. It cost him his career. Word of his actions spread through the industry, leaving a permanent blemish on his reputation. Doors that had once been open to him were now firmly shut. Even his mother, Helena, felt the sting of her own arrogance as her social circles grew weary of her disdainful nature. They had once believed wealth could shield them from consequences, but they soon realized that true respect and admiration come from character, not money. Over time, Mia found new love in an unexpected place. A man she met through her work, someone who shared her appreciation for family, hard work, and genuine kindness. He treated her with the respect and care she'd always deserved, and together they built a life filled with warmth and mutual support. This new chapter was more than a fresh start. It was a life free from pretense and shallow judgments, where Mia could proudly honour her roots without fear or shame. The lessons of her journey became an inspiration to many who knew her. Mia's story echoed with the truth that wealth and status are fleeting, but integrity and kindness build legacies that last. For Daniel and Helena, Mia's success was a constant reminder of the richness they could never buy, a richness found only in humility and genuine respect for others. Reflecting on her journey, Mia felt immense gratitude for her struggles, realizing they had shaped her into the resilient, self-assured woman she had become. Her life was a testament to the idea that no matter the challenges or setbacks, staying true to oneself would ultimately lead to peace and happiness. The moral of her story could be summed up in the words of her mother: strength doesn't come from hiding who you are. It comes from living with pride and kindness, no matter where life takes you. And so, Mia's life stood as a shining example of this timeless truth. Good eventually triumphs over adversity, and those who remain true to themselves will always find their way, no matter the obstacles. Thank you for watching Mia's powerful journey of resilience, courage, and the strength to stay true to herself. This story reminds us of the importance of embracing who we are, no matter the circumstances, and the impact of kindness and integrity in the face of adversity. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to stand up for your values, or experienced a moment when staying true to yourself changed your life? We'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. If you enjoyed Mia's story, please remember to like and share this video to help spread these inspiring messages to others. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that celebrate the power of resilience and kindness, and let us know where you're watching from. We love connecting with viewers from all around the world.